everyone, and welcome to a new episode from Fusion Talks. And today's theme is From Megawatts to Mindsets, leading the energy transition with purpose. So when we talk about the energy transition, we often reduce it to gigawatts, technologies, and targets. But reality is far more complex. Behind every megawatt delivered, there are trade-offs, constraints, and leadership decisions that quietly shape the future we all live in. And very few people have operated at that intersection across markets, technologies, and real execution. Today, I'm joined by Yasin Kasirga, a strategic energy leader who has contributed to more than 11 gigawatts of power capacity across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Yasin, welcome.
Thank you so very much for having me. I think we have been longing for it for a long time.
Exactly.
And I'm very happy that we have the chance eventually to make it here and also in person.
Exactly, despite the situation. So grateful and honored to have you with us.
Same here.
So we have great themes to cruise with Yasin around all the intersections of his expertise. And we want first to ground the dialogue in SDGs. So from the SDGs to reality. The UN SDGs are widely adopted, but often they remain high level. So from your experience, where do they truly translate into business decisions, and where do they fall short?
Yeah, but I think to start with, the UN SDGs are a great framework for sustainable human development.
Mm-hmm.
So if we cluster them like in different buckets, the
Yeah.
first couple of ones are all about the social fundamental development goals. And then comes the economic and infrastructure piece. And then comes the ones related with the environment, climate action 13, 14, 15. And the last two are about the implementation and the governance. So from that perspective, it's very normal that they have like a bigger umbrella of how we can structure the human development. I think what it really matters for the companies is when they really take it into action and when they convert their possibilities into purpose. That's a very good way of setting the direction of travel over there. Because most of the time we see a lot of maybe improvement on some certain SDGs like climate action, affordable clean energy, partnerships, innovation, efficiency. But also, if you just leave it on the pitch deck and if you don't really walk the talk, then you have that gap over there. And I think one important aspect to me is we use a lot the phrase business as usual, which is not usual anymore if you look for the way forward. And the companies who are going to shape the next decade are going to be the ones who are going to really embrace the change from what we so-called the good for business to business for good.
Yes.
And when I mean business for good, I'm talking about a sustainable operation, ethically with all their stakeholders and inclusive. So when you really combine the related SDGs with your field of action, together with inclusiveness, ethical and investor relations, and also getting everyone on board and making the focus from money to benefit to everyone, including the people, planet, and the profit.
Business.
That would be the best way forward for the companies.
Yeah, the force for good and the force for growth.
Absolutely.
We can do both.
Yeah, we can.
Exactly. So when developing large-scale energy solutions, how explicitly do SDGs influence decisions versus the commercial and regulatory drivers?
To be honest, as of today, in our reality, the big commercial decisions are still taken among the commercial aspects and the policy regulation framework. So SDGs are still not like the main factor behind the commercial logic. But the idea over there is SDGs not to really replace the commercial logic, but to shape it in a way so that this transformation from good for business to business for good can be reshaped in terms of decision making. And I think a very good example I can give, and this is an actual, real international conglomerate, they have incorporated the CO2 liability check in their overall investment decision criteria. So what it means is, whenever there is a new investment decision in the spreadsheet, the first check that they do is whether that project is going to increase our CO2 liability or not. And if the answer is it's going to increase our CO2 liability, regardless of the number at the ROI, they don't entertain the ROI discussion.
Wow.
I think this is where we would like to eventually evolve.
Exactly. This is mature because you don't wait to do something and then you want to clean the dirt or to think of possible decarbonization projects or offsetting.
Absolutely.
So it's at the core of decision making.
Plus, you eliminate stranded assets. And of course, if you are a public company, these are right now very transparent informations that you cannot hide, and you can check all the boxes and do the right thing.
And you mitigate risk at the early stages. So which SDGs are most directly impacted by the energy transition today and which are underestimated?
Number 7, affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities, industry and innovation. And I would count these three as the most like at the center of
the forefront.
The forefront.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the ones that are underestimated, I'm not saying neglected, but underestimated, is quality education, which we will connect into the literacy discussion, and also partnerships. Because if you can connect and increase the literacy, increase the understanding, we will have a huge, acceleration in terms of all embodiment. And also, if you really go for the partnerships, and especially improving the trust between governments, business,
all
and
stakeholders,
the communities, then you will pave the way forward. Because if you don't get these aligned, it's going to be very hard for the technology to scale. Exactly.
This is the room to eliminate any silos and show true inclusivity in mindset, attitude, and execution.
Absolutely.
So let's move to the literacy that you just addressed. You've worked across continents and technologies, mashallah. Where do you see the biggest gap today, technology or understanding?
I think it's been more than 20 years now, on my experience with different industries, sectors, and especially technologies. I never seen technology as the gap. It was always the understanding, full stop. I believe we have a lot of technologies which are commercially available right now within our grasp. And there are technologies that are being developed at the lab scale or pilot scale. The real deal is to really evaluate and understand how to use, where to use those technologies, and what are the trade-offs when we use and adapt the technology. And I think over there, it really boils down the understanding gap. If we can fill that gap between not only the policymakers, but also everyone involved. And let us not forget climate change or energy transition is an everyone, everywhere problem. It's a systems change problem. It's a system of systems problem. And that's why I think the understanding is sitting at the nucleus of everything.
And the more there's understanding, we appreciate that really we should leave no one behind.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. What does climate literacy mean, but in a business context? Like, what should leaders really understand?
The way I would define is a climate leader in business should be able to understand and relate the climate issues with the business decisions. I'm not talking about being an expert over here, but since, as I mentioned earlier, climate change or energy transition, it's touching every topic of finance, supply chain, operations, customers, competitiveness, and especially, to me, the most important one, the risk associated with that.
Yes.
So if you are in a business environment, I think at least three things you should be aware. One, where your emissions are coming from through your whole value chain.
Yes.
Number two is what decarbonization levers you have in your arsenal and which are really tangible and which are maybe a little bit more symbolic. And number three, what are the climate risks and opportunities for you to tackle in the short term and the long term? You don't need to be a scientist, but I think you should get yourself educated enough so that you can ask the right questions. You can improve your understanding in terms of what are the risks, because there is no company right now in the world who is immune or not vulnerable to climate risks.
Yes.
And it is not a matter of if anymore, but it's a matter of
It's
when.
happening.
It's a matter
We're
of
living
when.
it.
Yeah. So it's better if you are sitting in the corner office, make no mistake, and make sure you have a good understanding of the climate-infused risks to your business and your short and long-term mitigation plans to tackle them.
Risks, opportunities, and know the numbers, the data. And as we say, sometimes those risks are not included in the balance sheet. When they are, you see the monetization or the value of the risk, it becomes an aha moment.
Not yet, but it will come as well.
Exactly. And when we say how it impacts the bottom line, otherwise, many leaders are delusional, as if it's far because it's not quantified.
Absolutely.
Quantification makes the difference. Measure what matters.
Yeah.
You completed Yasin, the Climate Challenger journey with Fusion Minds and Sustain Labs Paris. How did that experience shape or refine your perspective on climate literacy and leadership?
I got my certificate on the 13th of
Mabrouk.
March. Shukran. Thank you so very much. I'm always on the lookout for new trainings, new information. Not only because I operate in this space, but also I would like to stay up to date and also, help others. And I was following Fusion Minds LinkedIn account. I came across to the post about Sustain Labs Paris, this climate leadership program. I went through the content. I found it really very well structured, very high caliber. I also appreciated the rigor and the discipline that they were asking, because it's like a 5 months program. And on top of that, there was the opportunity to really be with like-minded people.
Yes.
And of course, on top of that, mentorship opportunities. So when you just combine all of them, it was a no-brainer for me.
Very well-rounded.
And I also get the chance to understand more about what Fusion Minds is doing. I was talking before with Selma about how I loved the content that you prepared as well. And it has been a wonderful experience, to be very frank. And I think it reiterated my conviction as well as my understanding that apart from this technical knowledge and the literacy, it's also about really having the conviction and also spreading the word out. There is a very, very beautiful quote by C.S. Lewis. He says, people need to be reminded more often than they need to be instructed. So it was a very good polishing, very good, reinforcement.
Humanization as well.
It was a very, very well, way of reinforcing what we can all do to move the needle forward.
Exactly. Grounded in values. Thank you for the testimonial.
Thank you for all what you do.
Thank you. If you had to simplify the energy transition for non-expert audience, and we really would love many people to be on board and to have, not only democratize sustainability, which is our mission, but to find it accessible, easy to grasp. So what misconception would you correct in the energy transition?
Okay. I can start first with, rest in peace, Jane Goodall's quote.
Yeah.
She used to say all the time, every person, every action matters.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this to take the policymakers or the leaders or the decision makers off the hook, but to really underpin again the importance of individual action. That's one thing. Second thing is, the energy transition is not a switch. It's not just like on and off. It's a systemic change. It will take time. It will take all hands on deck effort. So number 3 would be about maybe a little bit correction about the decarbonization, because decarbonization is mostly taking action against our existing assets, the legacy assets. Just to give you an example, a numerical example again, one of the biggest outcomes of the COP28, the tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency. This was a result out of the global stocktake report to make sure we keep the Paris Agreement targets alive. Even if we fulfill, and I hope and I'm sure we will be able to reduce 7 gigatons. But the actual number that we need to reduce in terms of the emission reduction gap is 22 gigatons.
Oh, wow.
So we need to also look a lot about how we can decarbonize the existing assets for the way forward. And last but not least, I sometimes see that there is this lack of urgency on all these efforts. There is one thing which is not with us, and that's time. Time is not an ally here.
Yeah. At least I'm glad more scientists and media and other reports by various respected entities, they are taking the alarm, let's say. But yes, we need a much faster leap. And again, infrastructure is not only about the availability of technology, as you said, it's there, but the infrastructure in other countries that need to catch up so that it is all around the globe when it comes to the energy transition. This needs acceleration, investment, and yeah.
Sense of urgency, right?
Sense of urgency, exactly. So let's move to AI.
Oh.
This is one of the focal pillars for Fusion Minds. So there's growing momentum around digitalization and AI in energy. Where do you see AI making the biggest impact in accelerating decarbonization?
There are, I think, many aspects of AI adoption, AI use cases, but as of today, I will pick the one optimization, and it's really about coming back to the previous definition of decarbonization, to get the most out of the existing assets, how we can find a way to improve the efficiency, which is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of decarbonization. How we can make sure all those assets can be operated in a way that we can go for lower downtime, higher availability, reducing the waste, which eventually means reduced cost and also reduced emissions. I think the biggest use case is right now optimization.
Yeah, across industries, across even as built environment, everywhere.
Yep.
Yes. And many people sometimes comment when we are in huge ballrooms, in exhibitions or conferences about the cooling system, which in many times it's at peak, but maybe the footfall is not, at peak as well. So how things, can be managed in a smarter way. Yeah, this is all high energy consumption and it's inefficient.
It is.
Yeah. From your experience, Yasin, can AI genuinely change how we plan, operate, and optimize energy systems, or is it still early stage potential?
I'm a true believer of AI, and then there is also history behind. But I think AI profoundly changed our lives, as industrial revolution changed in 1784, as electricity changed in 1870, as internet changed in 70s and 80s. I think with AI, we have moved into a new era of that, a new definition of daily needs, health, production, consumption. And I do remember when I was in college, I was leading an internet society. And there is another famous quote from a mathematician. He said, God created integers, all the rest is work of man. So we made a funny spin-off of that saying, and we said, God created machine language, and all the rest is work of man. So AI is just not something new, to be frank. It was all started with Turing's work in 50s, and then there is a lot of legwork in between. Then this famous article of attention is all you need came, which structured this new way of neural architecture, and then it was the base of all these large language models, which evolved into imaging, coding, texting, and then at the end of the day, it's, to make it very simple, like an example again, it's all about having a structured data. It's all about getting the machine understand the patterns within that data, and then making the best out of the prediction. And I use the word structured data on a purpose, because in the world that we live in today, still 90% of the data that is generated in the world daily is not structured. So this gives us the idea about the potential in terms of AI. Of course, now we are talking it a lot because it is eventually, with all the legwork and the digitalization, internet, mobile, now it is in the grasp of everyone. It is in our reach. But if we come back to industry, there has been a lot of use cases for the last 10 to 15 years. So industry started to adopt it much more earlier, and it is really profoundly changing everything we do.
And that's inevitable. It's undisputed need.
I said profoundly changed.
Exactly, exactly. And what is one practical example where digital tools or AI have already improved decision making in energy?
Sure. I think I can give more than one, but to start with, the first is preventative maintenance and the asset performance.
Yes.
So let's remember what I said earlier about the structured data set, understanding the patterns, and then enabling high quality, high caliber prediction. So you have the historical data on one of your assets, let's say the performance, the vibration, the temperature, the pressure, runtime, and you are also receiving the online data. And you have the historian, so that you know what happened when things went south. Looking at all those patterns, now you have a high level of predictability of when there is going to be a potential downtime, when one of the components are going to fail. And since now you know all this information, you can go for a preventative maintenance, you can make sure the equipment is not down, and you can make sure you can get some savings in terms of your inventory, in terms of the spare parts, and you can make sure the equipment is going to have a much higher efficiency, less downtime, which is eventually helping a lot in terms of reducing the emissions. I think another example could be, I cannot stop mentioning grid again when it becomes or a topic of energy transition, the integration of renewables to the grid.
Yeah.
Again, there is a lot of usage of AI by utilities to combine the data sets of demand forecast, congestion points, renewables production, and making the most out of it in terms of seamlessly integrate the renewables. Because grid is, again, I love to say this, grid is the most complex machine we ever built, but at the same time, it needs modernization, and it needs all these kind of digital tools to get the most out of it. The third one could be the methane detection in terms of, again, the greenhouse gas warming potential. Methane is very potent, and now we are capable of combining the drone footage, the satellite data, the acoustics data, the sensor data, to have a much better and faster understanding of where we have the methane leakage. And last but not least, probably it's about the need deployment of projects, whether it is renewables, hydrogen, carbon capture, direct air capture. You again can combine a huge data sets of like land constraints, land characteristics, renewable resources availability. Even you can embed the policy intensives, and then it can give you the best predicted areas of where you can deploy all these new projects. So I think there is a lot of use case, and there is going to be more.
Like co-creation and the best operating model, infusing all of those solutions.
Absolutely.
Love it. I love technology. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
And awareness makes us not fear it, but
Embrace it.
ride the wave. Yeah. So let's delve into leadership, which is very important in the whole transition. What kind of leadership does the energy transition require today?
There are maybe 1,000 leadership traits, but among them, I think I would go for visionary and also grounded. So one side, you really need to understand where the world is going, but at the same time, you also need to understand what actions you can take today in order to have a meaningful outcome. Because the world is moving very fast, faster every day than the day before.
Yeah.
So I think you have to have this ability to adapt in between. I think not in terms of number two, but humility is super important. And humility comes from really understanding, and that's where we are connecting it to the literacy part. And especially, I would like to maybe open a parenthesis here when it comes to humility. If you really comprehend the way the world is built and the way we built the civilization, I think we will realize one thing very clearly. Among all the species, we are not superior to any of them. We are not superior to an eagle, a peregrine falcon, a cheetah, a snow leopard, or an orca. But we were able to build machines which moves faster, flies higher than them, and above ground, underground, within the water. We built submarines, we built satellites, rockets. But in exchange of loss of biodiversity,
water,
in exchange of loss of quality water, in exchange of dumping CO2 and other greenhouse gases into stratosphere to atmosphere, literally
even marine life
using it as if it's a waste repository, deforestation. So I think when we combine all of these together, it's a little bit like great power
trade-offs
comes with great responsibility.
Yeah.
So I would certainly say humility. And last but not least, it's about really being open to learning and being open to take bold decisions because of the urgency, because of the time required that we need to take all these actions into one bucket, and making sure we can pull people with us.
Exactly. Ambition, humility, risk-taking, and the visionary ability to as well anticipate and craft the future before it's even familiar, let's say. Yeah. How do you balance long-term sustainability goals with short-term commercial pressures?
Yeah.
And I think this is very high on the agenda, especially now when we see headwinds, like insecurity, uncertainty, and we don't wish sustainability to become, a side talk and not remain in the core.
If you spend really enough time, I think, in business, you will see there is always going to be headwinds. There is always going to be tailwinds, cycles, things out of your control. So what really matters is what you are sticking through, what you are really true to yourself, true to your understanding,
purpose.
Value, and the way you see your vision aligned with your purpose. And I think over there again, and at least what I try to do is to really find the right balance between what can we do today, which makes commercially sense, but at the same time, which still keeps us in the right path, in the long direction. Because if there is a fantastic solution, but not commercially viable, it's not going to scale. And if you don't have a solution, but something very commercially attractive, knowing the direction of travel, you know that it's not going to be durable. And I think that the gist of it is to really embed sustainability, not as a side perk, but as a non-negotiable quality in the business. Because when you get that one, and again, we mentioned earlier, it's like everywhere, everyone topic. You have to include your finance, operations, supply chain, customer, competitiveness. And once you start embedding it, I think you will start to see the course correction, at the same time gaining today, winning for today, but at the same time
paving for tomorrow. Beautifully put. It is really touching every department, every function, every decision maker, and it's a shared responsibility. What defines a high-performing team in this space today?
One of my favorite topics. I like Patrick Lencioni a lot, and he used to say, not technology, not strategy, not financing. The teamwork is the ultimate competitive force because it's so powerful and it's so rare. So I think this is still valid and it will stay to be valid. In terms of having the high performance teams, I think we can count a couple of qualities. One is to really be very curious, building trust among each other. Even there is this famous 5 dysfunctions of a team. So you have to make sure none of those dysfunctions exist in a team. So number one is you have to make sure there is no absence of trust. You have to make sure there is no fear of conflict. You have to make sure there is no inattention to results. And you have to make sure there is no avoidance of accountability. So if you can really structure a team, create a team around that, this is one of the most important ingredients of a high performance team. When it comes to combining those qualities with the energy transition, I think you will also need people who are cross-function minded. Because we mentioned earlier, it's not just like a department or a vertical anymore. You have to have people who understands different, pillars of energy transition, sustainability. And last but not least, you have to have a leader who leads with being humble, hungry for success, and smart in terms of people relations, but in that order: humble, hungry, and smart.
No ego.
No ego.
Energy. Energize the team and pull them behind this direction. This is core, and not every leader, it's about the title or the position. It's really about those qualities. This is what makes or breaks success in the team, and the loyalty and deep commitment to go above and beyond.
All the titles are temporary.
Exactly.
All the positions are temporary. What you leave behind is the legacy.
Yes. And the legacy is how people perform under your leadership, how you make them feel. Let's move to the fiery questions. How is your fire and the energy transition inside you?
Let's go.
So, one word for the future of energy.
Integrated.
Most overrated energy solution.
Any solution that is pitched as a silver bullet.
Okay. Because again, it's integrated. It's not one size fits all.
Yep.
Most underestimated opportunity.
Efficiency.
Leadership trait needed most, maybe. Or
I think you know the answer. Humility.
Humility. A belief about sustainability you challenge.
Ambition is enough. It's not.
Yeah. Ambition without action is just wishful thinking.
Yes.
And one message to the next generation.
I think I learned it during COP28 and I really embraced it. It is never give up on both action and hope, because action fuels hope and hope fuels action.
We need it truly. There is always hope to move the needle in the right direction, no matter sometimes how we see doubling down on the topic. So stay motivated and everyone can make a difference. Thank you so much, Yasin, for all the facts, the passion, and how genuine you were and grounded in the topic and in revealing what it takes to act on the energy transition. It's not about shifting sources when we talk about energy, it's about shifting mindsets, decisions, and leadership. So until next episode, stay tuned. Any message you wish to say before we wrap up?
I can say I think energy transition is one of the biggest leadership challenges of our time. And one thing I learned is it's not perfect, and nothing is going to be perfect. But what makes the difference is really the people who keep learning, who keep moving, and who keep building. And I believe energy transition or climate change is a very meaningful course to be on, and something that you can lead with passion.
Passion and continuous progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much for having me. My
Take good
pleasure.
care.